Sanibona, ngaphambi singene kwivideo namuhla, ngithi angithathe lethuba ngibonge isupport nothandeni esikhombise lona lingaphezu kokucabanga kwethu. Siyacela niqhubeke nisisupport njalo ngokubuka amavideo ethu, ungakhohlwa ukukhomenta, ushare, ulike. Siyafisa ukuzwa umbono wakho. Sicela ke singene kwivideo namuhla. Engikuqaphelile ukuthi lokutrenda kwe-MK Party sigcine sikhuluma ngayo nezindaba zoFloyd noBusisiwe Mkhwebane noMary Phadi. Sekushift ifocus yethu manje sase sayiyeka ukukhuluma ngezinto ezibalulekile. Kumanje kukhulunywa udaba lwe-appropriation le-budget. Vele i-budget iphasa kathathu ukuze igcinise i-budget ephelele. Isigaba sokuqala sokuthi uminister abeke i-fiscal framework i-proposal. Then kuhlala ama-committee okwehlukana kwawo decide ukuthi bayi-adopta noma bayi-amend, iphume lapho eParliament ifike ivotelwe, sikubonile lokho kwenzekile. Isigaba sesibili ilesi sokuthi mayifuneka iye ku-division of revenue bill la izofuna ihlukaniswe khona ngoba umasipala indawo na yonke into, bese kokugcina ya ku-appropriation bill. So zonke lezi zinto lezi ziyingxenye yokuphila kwethu manje nje ngoJulayi. Angazi ukuthi ngaluphi usuku kuzofuna ukuthi kuthathe isigaba sesibili se-budget. Ngithe-ke ngaphambi ngikhulume ngodaba likaBusisiwe Mkhwebane advocate, asike sikhulume ngalolu daba libaluleke ukwedlula lezi sizikhuluma manje. Libaluleke ukwedlula lezi sizikhuluma manje futhi ama-political parties abhizi akhulumela thina, so fanele sibe ingxenye lokho kukhuluma. Fanele sazi ngemvume-ke engayiphiwa yini njengabanikazi be-channel ukuthi asishare lezi zinto, ngoba ukushare lama breaking news nemigosi nazo zonke lezi zinto ekugcineni kosuku ngeke zisisize. Sizokhuluma nje kodwa asibuye sizikhulume lezi ezithinta impilo zethu. Nizongibekezelela-ke ngizocaphuna ama-clip ambalwa uze ukuthi bekuthiwane eParliament makukhulunywa ngento ethinta ibudget, ethinta impilo yakho, ethinta iphakethe lakho, uze ukuthi bekuthiwane. Emveni kwalapho sesingangena kodabeni kaMary Phadi no-advocate uBusisiwe Mkhwebane noJacob Zuma noFloyd. Ngicela ukuthi senzeni kanjalo. Ngiyacela ukuthi usubscribe, ushare, ulike, ucommente. Ngiyafisa ukuzwa ukubona kwakho ngalolu daba lonke oluzobekwa la. Ngiyakufisa impela ukuzwa umbono wakho. Ungasupporta futhi ngokusidonatela noma ngamalini onayo, ikhona i-account kwi-comment ephiniwe. Ungasupporta ngokujoin i-membership yale channel ukusilekelela. Ngicela ukuthi uzwe la.
Honorable Molefe raises the point about the regressive nature of the fuel levy. This was equally so a submission by the PBO, if I'm not mistaken, in the point. Therefore, I think it would be amiss of us not to note that point. Whilst the removal of VAT as a regressive tax is noted, the fuel levy as a substitute is also burdensome on poor citizens. And it also has an economic multiplier in and of itself. I think the point must be made, and it must be supplemented in 10.1 by saying that obviously the committee notes with concern the introduction of the fuel levy. And of course there are submissions by members of the public who made the same concerns. We are amiss of us not to represent their views. Honorable Bateman, Honorable Wakeland, let's have one meeting. So what were you? Yes, Honorable Bateman.
Thanks, Honourable Chair. I think, I'm just going to give my personal perspective on this one, right? Which is, you sometimes have to make. You sometimes have small losses in the face of big wins, and VAT is a big win. By comparison, to push up to have pushed back on the increase of a VAT rate of 2% is enormous. The fuel levy wouldn't actually be even in the news were it not for the fact that it had been frozen for 3 years, and between budgets 1, 2, and 3, there was an increase that was introduced, which was actually not a very big increase relative to the size of the fuel levy. It's only actually an inflation adjustment. So in real terms, there actually hasn't been an increase in the fuel levy. There's actually just been, it's just held parity with what it was before. But it's a lot of political capital has been made out of it, which is actually not justified. I think that's the big picture context. For 3 years, it was held constant, which was a way to try and undo some of the regressive effects of the tax, which was great. We weren't able to, or the government was not able to, deliver that benefit again this time round, in the context of very tricky circumstances of having to balance a budget without the 2% VAT increase. So I think. I'm not trying to take anything away from the sort of underlying point, but I also don't think it must be made into a bigger point than what it is in the context.
Honorable Mwali.
Thank you so much, Chairperson. Maybe just to stress the gravity of the regressiveness of this option that was taken by the minister, moving from VAT to fuel levy. The status also emphasized the fact that more than 2/3 of the households in the lowest income quintile spend over 20% on their monthly income on public transport. So, Chair, this is hampering hard on the lowest income of this country. So, really, this is very deep. And we will not then count as this committee as a win to say moving from VAT to fuel levy was a win. Because, and also supported by the sentiments shared by most of the public submissions that we got. They specifically mentioned that this is a regressive tax. And it would be bizarre to not see it on our report. Mentioned that it is regressive, because it is regressive. Thank you.
Honorable Molefe, and then Bateman and Honorable Siat, is your hand up? Oh, I don't want to. Yes?
Yeah, the other strange thing about this fuel levy issue is that I think it raises about, is it 4.1 billion that it will raise? Huh? 4 billion that it raised from the fuel levy. The budget is 2 trillion. How do you balance, or how do you add, or how do you plug a hole of by 4 billion rand in a 2 trillion budget by taking the 4 billion from the poor? So, I mean, the budget is so big that 4 billion really is minuscule, is nothing compared to the total budget. But then what doesn't make sense to us is, why does the fuel levy become such a big thing that has to be done now? Take that money in a regressive tax from the poor, inflationary, counter anti-growth, and so on and so forth. Why do you have to resort to such a measure just for 4 billion out of 2 trillion? It really, Chair, I think maybe it is worth mentioning that it doesn't make sense.
Honorable Wakelin, then Mkhonto.
Thank you, Chair. I hear the sentiment, but I want to just speak to the facts. I'm just going to go look quickly. The fuel levy will actually just take out 3 billion out of the economy. And the fuel price is still 120 cheaper than last year, is what it was. The VAT would have taken out 16 billion out of the economy. And it's within that discussion that we need to try to find each other. These are the actual facts, because I'm concerned when we start because you're not comparing apples with apples, yeah? You're comparing apples with a pear. So let's just be clear on the matter. And I hear it is an emotional issue. But here's the reality. It is cheaper than it was last year. And on the point of Honourable Bateman, there was no adjustment done for the last 3 years on it. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Mkhonto.
Chair, I want to go back to what I presented.
Hey, Honorable Mkhonto, can I ask you to use the microphone?
Okay. Can I go back to what I presented and Honorable Mwale was alluding to it? We can't change because we are seated here, now we understand each other, maybe then we change what was presented by the public. It can't be. We must put what was presented by the public as is. We can't misrepresent the facts. As Mr. Makakula was saying, Salga said it like this, I can't change it. So even in this case, Chair, the public presented the fuel levy as a regressive tax. Let us put it like that. We can't change what they have said. And to further explain, Chair, there are people when they want services from the Department of Home Affairs, the Department of Social Development, a clinic, chain stores, whatever, they have to travel. They can't walk. Maybe some of us, we are privileged that we are having these services at our doorstep, and we don't imagine how some people have to travel a few tens of kilometers for them to access basic government services. So it becomes a burden to them. We can't say the fuel tax is something small because we are comparing it to the VAT. No. How does it become a burden to a person who is staying at Mkanduli, to a person who is staying at Bergville, to a person who is staying at Tomo, to a person who is staying at Dludluma? That is what we must talk about, not compare it with VAT. Thank you.
Honourable members, can I make a recommendation here? Firstly, I think it would be amiss of us as a committee to be silent on the fuel levy. Therefore, it must be stated that the committee notes the increase in the fuel levy. And correctly, I think the committee has the right to raise the concern about its impact on households. Because we are having two discussions. At a macroeconomic and fiscal level, others would argue that 4 billion in a 2.1 trillion rands budget is insignificant, and there's a macroeconomic argument that can be made for that. I am not persuaded by the argument that it's been left alone for the last 3 years, therefore it must. Because if you keep the same argument, you could say, well, VAT was left alone for the last 3 years, therefore it should. But what I am also wanting to say is that, of course, as a committee, we have heard submissions from the people of this country as it pertains to this issue of the fuel levy. But I don't think the point, and then what I would do, the other submissions that were made, because this matter has been sufficiently ventilated in court, I do think that it must be noted the fact that a review of the fuel price must not now becomes even more urgent. Because you will recall there was extensive discussion about where it sits in its review. Because whilst Honourable Waitlin says it's been in, the current fuel price is a rand cheaper than what it was, the calculation and the formula thereof still means that government tax of the issue doesn't always sufficiently adjust for whether consumers receive relief when, for example, the fuel price goes down. And I can recall in the first engagements with Treasury, a discussion being raised about how this compares to neighboring countries, Botswana, etc. So I do think as a committee it's important to note the point, to note its impact on the poor, on the economy writ large, given the inflationary. But I do think the recommendation must be the review of the fuel price itself, because that is, as a point of consensus, something that even National Treasury have been calling for, and as something that we can endorse, because that will deal principally with a question that says, how do you ameliorate or deal with the burdensome nature of what this means prospectively? Because the points that have been made by members about its impact on transport costs, input costs, all of that are well made. I think for us, in terms of the division of revenue bill and the increase in the levy, we must note it, and I would urge that the committee take a view that equally so encourages a review on the fuel price. There are preceding points, and the preceding points are other revenue-raising mechanisms must be sought, because we can't sit here next year and be, if you like, creative people around which tax must be increased next. It's unsustainable. Next year we can't say, okay, this year we debated VAT and fuel. Next year we're going to go fuel, and maybe next year we'll try PIT, maybe medical aid tax cuts. Maybe no. Other additional revenue sources must be found, and I think that is we fair on our committee. Notwithstanding the need for GDP growth, notwithstanding for all of those which are made in subsequent points. But I think in just dealing, because that's what the point prior is trying to allude to, additional revenue must be found. That's not the debate. Or at least if someone thinks that we shouldn't find any additional revenue, then I'm not sure. But I do think then that point, I think it's 10.1.1 comma, that of course, there will be a negative impact on the fuel levy, and it would be amiss of us as a committee not to note that point. Honourable Mwali, then Honourable Mlefa.
Chairperson, one thing we should pick up from this discussion is that no one is disagreeing with the regressiveness of these two, which is VAT and fuel levy. We are now discussing the extent of the regressiveness when you are comparing these two. But the fact remains, this one that was suggested by the minister is a regressive tax. And it must be reflected on the report, because we are actually discussing and considering a report. It must be reflected there. And also, we cannot remove the fact that from the public, which was invited to comment on the report, they mentioned that it is a regressive tax, and we can't remove it.
No,
it must be reflected on the report that the public is in or took a position that this introduction of this fuel levy is a regressive tax.
I think the point is being included there. We can add word, but it's included. I don't think necessarily that it's not now not being included. Honourable Molefe.
Chair, to add injury to insult, it has been for a while now that we have observed the deteriorating geopolitical tensions in the Middle East, which indicate, if you are a prudent risk manager, indicate that there will be upward pressures on the fuel price, because the price of oil is likely to go up. And it looks like that risk is slowly materializing, because they say that Iran has closed a strait there, a passage for oil. But even before we knew, even before this happened, and we knew that there is tension there, and that tension is likely to put an upward pressure on the fuel price. So to increase the fuel levy in the face of a potential fuel price increases as a result of exogenous factors is imprudent.
I do think, honourable members, we could go around, because yes, I do take the point, and the matter, as I said to you, has been in multiple fora, notwithstanding our courts. I do think that the point that it is made that it's a regressive impact, regressive tax, and that, Honorable Molefe, the point that you bolster the point that I'm making, which is to say a review of the fuel pricing. Because here's the thing, it is important not also in the light of the geopolitical tensions that are going to take place. So even prior to this issue, there was that. What I'm trying to not get us into a space of going is to say, we note the inputs of the public. We noted in the report that the fuel levy is regressive and that an urgent call be made. What is within the locus control of Treasury? The locus of control of Treasury is to do the review of the fuel price and then make recommendations fitting post that review. Where we cannot be at now is at yea or nay, given the fact that the courts have ruled and this matter is here. So I am suggesting that we take the point that, not keeping in mind the regressive nature of the tax, that there must be an urgent review of the fuel price and that formula. Honourable Bateman.
Honourable Chair, yes, we would support that recommendation.
So if we can put it on there in that light, Mashile, can you read that sentence so that I know?
Yeah. Yona vile bengithi angikulethe yona le. Futhi kukhulunywa udaba olubaluleke kakhulu njengoba umuzwa baba uBrian Molefe ekhuluma ngalempe ekhona ko-Iran ukuthi uma kunezimpi ezinje lokho okuzokwenza ukuthi i-oil ohlaza lo ukhuphuke okuzophinde kufaka incindezi nakho ukuthi upetrol uphinde ukhuphuke futhi. So ngaleso sizathu yingakho bethi lento ye-fuel levy ezokhuphuka kanti nesimo siyabonakala ukuthi kwenzakala noba lento ezenzeka kulamazwe ziyasi-affecta nathi. Yabona nje impi yase-Ukraine nase-Russia nayo futhi is-affectile. So into ebengithi angilethele yona umama ko-advocate uBusisiwe Mkhwebane izolo uthatha ithuba lokuthi aclarify ngoba ukukhuluma bese sekuba sengathi i-MK party yona emangalela uMary Phadi nanokuthi asicacisele kwenzakaleni ngoba bagcine bona beclaim i-victory kanti akuyona. So into engizoyenza ngizomcaphuna yena ngicaphuna uMary Phadi bese siyayivala le video.
Today is the 23rd of June 2025. We are here at the Mbombela High Court. I want to clarify that Ms. Phadi is the one who took the organization Umkhonto Wesizwe Party to court for alleged contempt of court and also for the fact that her membership was cancelled. So the MK Party opposed that application and filed an answering affidavit, which has been signed by President Zuma, that answering affidavit, and we filed the counter application against her for her removal from legislature because her membership was cancelled by the officials in February already. Due to the late filing of the affidavit by Ms. Phadi, it became apparent or necessary that the matter be postponed because what Ms. Phadi did and the lawyers, they enrolled the matter on the roll, but then they never submitted any documents. Hence, they withdrew it. But fortunately, we've already filed a notice to oppose, and the president filed the affidavit. So I would say then eventually the parties agreed that the matter will be enrolled on an agent roll and will be heard on the 8th of July.
Njengoba umuzwa ku-advocate uBusisiwe Mkhwebane clarify ukuthi umuntu okuyiyona befaka i-case umama uMary Phadi. Mfisa lokhu kucace ngoba ngimzwile naye enkulumeni yakhe kuba sengathi. Kodwa-ke okuvelile ukuthi uJacob Zuma kwi-affidavit aresponde ngayo ubhalile ukuthi uMary Phadi akaseyona ilidi convener waseMpumalanga. So uconvener waseMpumalanga ngu-advocate uBusisiwe Mkhwebane. Asimcaphuneke uMary Phadi siza ukuthi utheni bese siyivala ivideo.
For joining us and a good evening to you. There's so much to clarify around just really what is happening with your matter with the MK party. I think that a lot of the attention lately also sitting on the former SG, and we'll get to that. But I wanted to start with this. When you look at your own positioning within the MK party, you've, of course, seen what you call a victory today in the courts, and please do unpack that for us. Do you consider yourself still very much a member and a leader within the MK party, even though Jacob Zuma being adamant that you are not?
Look, I am considering myself as a leader because I'm a leader in my own right in the society. And it wouldn't change the fact that MK is not an individual. MK is broad. So there are individuals within Umkhonto Wesizwe that would want to distract the process. So I don't think that we should narrow it to an individual and say that if I'm uncomfortable with a certain comrade or a member of the political party, then everybody is against the leadership of myself or as a leader in Umkhonto Wesizwe.
Yeah.
What happened is that I was granted the court order on the 3rd of December, and in February, another allegations against myself were issued, and therefore we took the former SG to court because of contempt of court with regard to the fact that there was a court order. And it was just a simple thing, follow the normal disciplinary process. And in my case, Umkhonto Wesizwe Constitution does not apply to Mary Phadi, but it can apply to any member in Umkhonto Wesizwe. So we took the former SG to court because of being in contempt of court. And when we got there today, remember, after we took him there, we realized that he's not going to be with the political party anymore. And then we decided to ease the matter, and in that process, MK opposed. And when the counter application, when we're supposed to wait for the date of next year, and then they then used the same date that we were supposed to meet with the former SG for the contempt of court. So there was no court case today. It was not on the roll, and there was nothing. We just went to court, and unfortunately, again, it was misleading on the social media. We knew there was no court case, but they then put it on the social media that there is a court matter that is sitting today, and it was just an ordinary member from Umkhonto Wesizwe that did that.
Okay.
Yazi ukuba uMary Phadi akasumuntu omdala bengizothi ingqondo yakhe isebenza kancane, noma ucabanga ukuthi ukhuluma nabantu ingqondo yabe isebenza kancane. Angeke kuthiwa wena umangalele iphathi, umangalele iphathi, ekugcineni kosuku usuthi wena bengekho i-court case, ekubeni icala lifakwe nguwe. Kanjani vele, kanjani? Ngoba phela nguye ummangali, namaphepha ayasho ukuthi uyi complainant, then laba abanye abamangalelwa. Umkhonto Wesizwe Party legislature yase provincial legislature bese kuba uFloyd Shivambu. Manje usho kanjani ukuthi bekune misleading lapha ukuze kuthiwa kune case kanti bekungena case? Kanjani? Mhlambe yimoshawa isilungu, anicela ningilekelele. Kanjani ngoba phela nguye ummangali. Manje kuza kanjani ke? Hayi lo mama lo dlala ama game. Hayi ngicela ukuyibamba le video la, bengithi angikulethele la wazi kwenzakalani odabeni lelo lika oluthinta umama uMary Phadi kanye nomkhonto Wesizwe Party. Siyabonga ke ukuthi as-update into eqondile uadvocate uBusisiwe Mkhwebane. Mina nawe sidibane kwivideo elandelayo. Ngiyacela ungakhohlwa ukusubscribe, ulike, ushare, ucomment. Ngiyabonga.